It was a night that seemed made for it, shrouded in a darkness you could almost feel the weight of as you moved. And it was frightening. The breathing of that beast of a world, the sound of the sea, a breathing that came right up and expired at their feet. They stood with their cardboard suitcases and their bundles on a stony stretch of beach protected by the hills between Gala and Laketa. They had reached there at nightfall. They had left their villages at daybreak. Villages of the interior, far removed from the sea, clustered in the arid plague of feudal lands. For some, it was the first time they had seen the sea. The thought of having to cross the whole of it from that deserted beach in Sicily at night to get to another deserted beach in America, also at night, was deeply disconcerting. Because the deal was this.
I take you on board at night,
The man had said, a kind of traveling salesman, judging by the style of his patter, though with a serious and honest face.
and I land you at night. You land on the beach in New Jersey. I'll put you ashore, a short walk from Nuova York. Those who have relatives in America can write and tell them to go wait for you at Trenton Station 12 days after we set sail. You do the calculation. Of course, I can't guarantee the exact date you will get there. Let's suppose that the sea might be rough. Let's suppose that the Coast Guards might be on the lookout. One day, here or there, will make no difference to you. The important thing is to land in America.
To land in America really was the important thing. How or when hardly mattered in the end. If their letters had succeeded in reaching their relatives, with those confused and scrawled addresses that they'd managed to inscribe on the envelopes, then they would make it too. Whoever has a tongue shall cross the sea, as the proverb rightly had it. And they would have crossed the sea, that great dark ocean, and they would have reached the story and the farm, the stores and farms, of America, the welcoming circle of brothers, uncles, nephews, cousins, the warm, luxurious, spacious houses, the automobiles that were as big as houses. 250,000 lyre, half on departure, half on arrival. They kept the money in the style of scapularies between their skin and shirts. They had sold everything they had in order to scrape it together. The house, the land, the mule, the donkey, that year's provisions, the chest of drawers, the blankets. The craftier ones had resorted to moneylenders, with the secret intention of cheating them at least this once, after years of harassment. They relished the thought of how the faces of those moneylenders would look when they received the news that they'd gone. Come and find me in America, bloodsucker, and maybe you'll get your money back. But without interest, even if you do manage to track me down? The dream of America was awash with dollars, with cash no longer clutched in a shabby wallet or hidden beneath their shirts, but stuffed casually into trouser pockets and pulled out by the handful the way they'd seen their relatives do it. Relatives who had left half-starved, thin as rakes and scorched by the sun, then returned after 20 or 30 years, though only for a short vacation, with their round, rosy-cheeked faces handsomely contrasting with their white hair. It was 11 o'clock already. One of them lit the lantern, the signal that they were ready to be collected and taken aboard the steamer. When he extinguished it again, the darkness seemed even thicker and more menacing. But just a few minutes later, from the relentless breathing of the sea, a more human, domestic sound emerged from the water, like that of buckets being rhythmically filled and emptied. And then came the sound of voices, a muffled chatter. They found themselves in the presence of Signor Melfa, which was the name they knew the organizer of their great adventure by, even before realizing that the boat had touched land.
Is everyone here?
He asked. Signor Melfa turned on a torch and counted heads. 2 people were missing.
Maybe they've had second thoughts. Maybe they'll turn up later. Either way, so much the worse for them. What's the point of waiting for them? With the risks that we're running already.
Everyone agreed that it was not worth waiting.
If any of you doesn't have the cash ready,
warned Signor Melfa,
they might as well start walking home again right now. Because if anyone thinks that they're going to spring that little surprise when we're already on board, they're making a big mistake. If that happened, I swear I'd drop the whole lot of you back off again. Then everyone would suffer, thanks to one person, which isn't fair. And that person would be made to pay with a beating from me, and from his mates too, that he'll remember for as long as he lives. If he's lucky, that is.
Everybody swore that they had the necessary cash, down to the last lira,
Get aboard then!
said Signor Melfa. And suddenly, each of the travelers became a formless mass, a confused bundle of luggage.
Christ, and have you brought the kitchen sink with you as well?
Signor Melfa began to blurt out curses, only stopping when the whole cargo, men, bags, and baggage, had been bundled into the boat, at the risk of persons or luggage ending up overboard. For Signor Melfa, the difference between a person and an item of luggage was that the person had 250,000 lire on him, stitched into his coat or held between his shirt and skin. He knew them only too well. These peasant bastards, these louts. The journey did not last as long as expected, 11 nights, including the one on which they'd left. And the nights were counted rather than the days, because they were nights of suffocating, atrocious overcrowding. They felt submerged in the combined reek of fish, diesel, and vomit, as if in a hot, black, bituminous liquid. They were oozing it at daybreak, exhausted as they climbed on deck, seeking light and air. If for them the idea of the sea was associated with a verdant, undulating plain stirred by the wind, the real sea terrified them. Their insides clenched and knotted. Their eyes were painfully blinded if they so much as attempted a glance towards the horizon. But on the 11th night, Signor Melfa ordered them on deck. At first they thought they could see dense constellations that had descended onto the sea like flocks. But these turned out to be towns, the towns of wealthy America glittering like jewels in the night. And the night itself was enchanting, calm and gentle, a half-moon sailing amidst a transparent fauna of clouds with a lung-clearing breeze.
This is America,
said Signor Melfa. Is there any danger it might be some other place? Someone asked, since he had spent the entire journey thinking about the fact that there are no roads or tracks on the sea, and that it was a godlike feat to find the right route without mistakes, steering a boat between sky and water. Signor Melta gave him a pitying look and asked everyone else,
Have you ever seen a skyline like this one, in your neck of the woods? Can't you feel that even the air is different? Can't you see how brilliantly the towns here sparkle?
Everyone agreed, looking with pity and resentment at that companion of theirs who had dared to ask such a stupid question.
Let's settle the bill, said Signor Melfa.
They fumbled beneath their shirts and extracted the money.
Get your things ready, said Signor Melfa after stashing it away.
They only needed a few minutes. Having almost exhausted the provisions they'd supplied themselves with for the journey, all they were left with was the odd item of linen and the presents for their relatives in America. A chunk of pecorino, a well-aged bottle of wine, something embroidered to put at the center of a table or on the back of a sofa. They disembarked walking on air, weightless, laughing and humming tunes, and one burst into full-throated song just as soon as the boat began to move off.
So you've understood nothing,
hissed Signor Melfa angrily.
You're determined to land me in it. As soon as I've put you ashore, you can rush up to the first cop you see and get yourselves deported on the next available boat. I don't give a shit. You're free to kill yourselves in any way you like. I've kept to my side of the bargain. This is America, and I've dumped you here. Now, for Christ's sake, give me the chance to get back on board.
They gave him more than enough time to get back on board. They remained sitting on the fresh sand, undecided, not sure of what to do next, blessing and cursing the night which gave them protection as long as they stayed still on the beach. But that would turn into a terrible ambush if they dared to leave it. Signor Melfa had advised them to scatter, but no one felt inclined to separate from the others. Who knew how far away Trenton was and how long it would take to get there? Then they heard in the distance, sounding unreal, a song. It sounds like one of our own Carters, they thought, and that the world must be the same everywhere, that everywhere man expresses in song the same melancholy, the same sorrow. But they were in America now. The cities that blazed beyond the horizon of sand and trees were the cities of America. Two of them decided to head off as scouts. They went in the direction of the lights that the nearest town cast into the sky. Almost immediately they found a road.
Tarmasit. Well maintained. How different roads are here compared to back home.
But really, they had expected it to be wider and straighter. They kept away from it to avoid meeting anyone. They walked alongside it through the trees. A car passed. It looks like a Seicento, then another looking like a Millicento, and then another.
They keep cars like ours for amusement. They buy them for their kids, like people back home buy bicycles for theirs.
Two deafening motorbikes passed, one chasing the other. It was the police. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Thank goodness that they'd stayed off the road. And there, finally, were the signs. They looked along the road in both directions, stepped onto it, and went near enough to them to read, Santa Croce Camarina, Scogliti.
Santa Croce Camarina. I've heard of the place before.
It sounds familiar to me too, and even Scoliti rings a bell.
Maybe one of our relatives lived there. Perhaps it was my uncle before he moved to Philadelphia. If I remember rightly, he was living in a different city before Philadelphia.
My brother also lived someplace before heading for Bruchilin, but I really can't remember what it was called. And anyway, we're saying Santa Croce, we're saying Skoglit, but we've no idea how they pronounce these words here. American isn't pronounced like it's written.
That's true. And the great thing about Italian is just that. It sounds exactly like it's written. But we can't spend the night out here. We've got to take a risk. The next car that passes, I'm stopping. I'll just say, Trenton. People are more polite here. Even if we don't understand what they're saying, they're bound to point to give a sign. And that way, we'll work out where to find this blasted Trenton.
Around the curve, 20 meters away, a Cinquecento emerged. The driver saw them dart out with their arms raised, waving for him to stop. He slammed on the brakes, cursing. He didn't think it could be a holdup in an area as quiet as this, and opened the door, thinking that they wanted a lift.
Trenton?
One of them asked.
Shay?
Asked the driver.
What effing Trenton are you on about?
The driver exclaimed, cursing.
He speaks Italian.
They both said, looking at each other to see what to do next. It perhaps the time had come to reveal their situation to a fellow countryman. The driver shut the door and switched the engine back on. The car jerked forwards, and only then did he shout out to the two men, standing in the road like statues.
Drunkards, drunken cuckolds, and sons of...
The rest was drowned out as he accelerated away. There was a protracted silence.
Now I remember,
said the one a moment later, who'd thought the name Santa Croce sounded familiar.
My father went to Santa Croce Camarina one year when things had gone badly in our region. He went there for the harvesting.
Then they flung themselves down as if they had been knocked into the ditch at the side of the road. There was no hurry, after all, to deliver the news to the others that they had disembarked in Sicily. First published in the newspaper Iochunità, 21st October 1962, then included in Racconti Siciliani, a non-commercial edition of Sciascia's short stories published in Urbino in 1966. It was subsequently published in Il mare colore del vino, Ainuadi, 1973.